Welcome back, a special end of summer edition of the PGN Par 4. I'm Matt Gajtka with Zac Weiss, and we're breaking down not just the end of the PGA Tour season, but also some implications moving forward, as they say. And also, with regards to LIV, a tour that is really just about halfway through its 2022 season. So a lot of talk about men's pro golf here, Zac, and it has been an eventful year in men's pro golf. So it looks like we're just going to spend all of our topics on that particular side of the sport this time around. And let's start with the PGA Tour, because you had a player in Rory McIlroy win his third FedEx Cup by winning the Tour Championship. With the score adjusted, that was his first time winning the Tour Championship. And so he had to come from behind in a couple of different ways against Scottie Scheffler and a few of the players who were already preset ahead of him due to their finish in the season-long rankings. But also, he started horrifically, a triple bogey on the first hole, and comes back to win the whole thing. So very fitting. I think you and I would agree that the Tour's biggest defender wins the Tour's biggest prize. Apologies to the Players' Championship, but this is how the season is set up, and it has been for the past 15 years or so. And Rory takes care of business. It's not Justin Thomas, it's not Jon Rahm, but I would argue it's probably the best possible outcome for the PGA Tour's biggest supporter, and you could argue its biggest star, delivering here and getting the victory. So you said about a week ago it feels almost redundant that he won, but what are your feelings a week beyond now, a week plus beyond, as Scottie Scheffler did have his breakthrough? He won the most times. He won the Masters as well. Rory hasn't had a major in 8 years now. But does this feel right? Is Rory the best player on the PGA Tour?
It is redundant. I'm sorry. A week has not changed my mind. I guess I'm stubborn, but I mean, did the best player this year win? No. Did the most consistent player this year win? Yes, but those don't have to be mutually exclusive events. And you know what? That's okay. I think this is the first year that really beyond the golf course has a lot to factor into the golfer of the year, or if you're across the pond, the true champion golfer of the year. But it comes to a point where I think when you're in Rory's shoes with the way the format is now, agree or disagree, it almost feels like you're stealing if you're coming from behind, because there's the added emphasis of full season play having a meaning with that multiple shot advantage that Scottie Scheffler had over Patrick Cantlay at week's beginning, or at least at tournament's beginning, rather. But like you said, Rory McIlroy did his best Tom Kim impression, if you will, except he did him slightly one worse or one better, depending on how you look at par in this instance. But it did motivate him. He said that in the post-round interview on television, and he doubled down on that remark in the post-round press conference, or I guess really end of the year press conference, really. And it kept him in it. And when you have so much riding on 18 holes, and I think with McIlroy, he was the guy that was affected by the money the least, because a lot of the guys that were affected by money were being in talks about the tour that we're going to discuss in shots 2 and potentially in shot 3. And quite frankly, Rory is at a point in his life where he's not fazed by money, and money does not move the needle for him. And it was very, very clear throughout the season with his actions and his words both equally measured. And it really, really showed where a lot of guys are shooting under par, but the one guy that didn't shoot under the par was the top golfer in the world, Scottie Scheffler, who this was the chance to put an exclamation point on the richest season ever on the PGA Tour, and he was unable to do so. And for McIlroy, kind of seeing it right in front of him, I think having that visual, of course, helps him. And like you said, yes, it was his first triumph in this setting, but maybe hindsight being 2020, this was his most validating. Of course, he did get his occasional pot shot or two on the rival tour, but he has been a lot more measured. And I think it's just a matter of this being more of an exhausting season than ever, between the golf, which of course with the travel and the play and the ups and downs is exhausting in its own right, but the defense of the PGA Tour and being the unofficial official spokesperson of the tour, the behind the scenes that him and Tiger are at with the venture that they announced just before the tournament started. Rory McIlroy is busier than ever before. And let's not forget that he's a dad and a husband too, on top of all of that as well, which really gets lost in the shuffle when sports talk is the most prevalent thing that we discuss. And there's more on McIlroy's plate now than there ever was, and it only makes it tougher. And with some of the tour obligations that are coming up, the golf course might be beckoning in the States a lot more often than it was before. And McIlroy admits that even playing overseas within these next couple of weeks, he feels uncomfortable because he knows a lot of these guys he maybe ended on murky terms with because of their decision, or he's going to see them again and those paths are going to cross. So the easy thing for him to do is enjoy this victory, maybe take a couple sips of champagne or wine or whatever his beverage of choice might be. But no, he's defending the honor and going back overseas and maintaining some European tour or whatever they're called anymore, because I just lose track of everything anymore. But
DP World Tour, yeah.
the DP World Tour, thank you. Running on Team No Sleep. I know you can relate to that right now, but more so, I mean, he's establishing that honor because he's had a heck of a career there too, and has been a champion for them too. And of course, it's an important non-verbal, verbal statement of its own because the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour themselves have been so closely aligned, and they doubled down on that alliance when it was unclear if the DP World Tour felt the same way. And it was a very important statement for the two of them to kind of cross a line and do so very strongly. But was that the right winner? Yeah, I mean, I think this is a fair winner based on how everything has gone, but I still feel like it is the case of copy paste. It's a lot of what we discussed in a previous part for resurfacing, just on a lot higher of a stage level with a lot more at stake.
Just listening to you talk about McIlroy and his obligations off the course, you're right. They are massive, and he's taken on a lot of them on his own. He's taken on all of them on his own volition. So it's not like we can feel sorry for him, but at some points I did feel that I was watching a man with a burden. And at the Open Championship, that final day, it just felt like a guy stuck in second gear and couldn't find that extra gear. Maybe he was worn out from all that emotionally. I know I would probably be. Even if I were in a position like McIlroy, where I'm supposedly used to the attention, it was huge. It was massive at the 150th Open at St. Andrews. And he makes that miraculous bunker shot on Saturday to take the lead. It seemed like it was all falling in his favor. And then it wasn't, slowly and excruciatingly. But then I think more about it. And perhaps, as you alluded to, the golf course becomes a haven for Rory because it's the one place where everything seems to make sense and he has the most control over the outcome, at least as much control over an outcome that a golfer has once he hits the ball and puts it into play. So there could have been a positive effect on Rory on the golf course because of all that he has been shouldering here in this fight against LIV, and as you mentioned, with the different ventures, and now perhaps worrying about fractured relationships with old Ryder Cup buddies and things of that nature. So maybe on the course is absolutely his shelter and the place where he can just do what he does best. Maybe that contributed to it, as opposed to being something he had to overcome. Maybe it wasn't an obstacle. Maybe it was actually a benefit in some form or fashion. All right, well, I've brought the Open a couple of times. Let's talk about some of the new players who made the jump on to LIV Golf. And chief among them, the Open champion, the champion golfer of the year, Cam Smith of Australia. He's the number 2 ranked player in the world, easily the highest ranked player by the official World Golf Ranking to sign on with LIV Golf and with Greg Norman's outfit. And Cam was in contention in his first event just this past weekend in Boston. And Zach, I watched most of the final 2 days, which remain blessedly commercial free. I know that's not going to last if they get a TV deal, but I'm enjoying it while I can. But the best finish easily out of the 4 LIV events. And you get Dustin Johnson, arguably the biggest fish, the biggest star, if not the highest ranked player, but Johnson winning in a playoff against a couple of newcomers. Joaquin Neiman, who I think was a coup for LIV Golf, being a young player on the rise, and also Anirban Lahiri, who brings plenty of eyeballs from the continent of Asia, which also you can see obviously is a goal of LIV with where they're playing. They'll be in Bangkok soon. And also with some of the lower ranked players that they've added, you can tell that they're trying to give it a much more of an international flavor. And I think so far they have been successful in that. But this week also felt, Zach, this event in Boston felt like LIV as they envisioned it. I think they probably wanted to have more of a knockout punch from the start in London a couple of months ago, but the comments of Phil Mickelson and some cold feet from some players prevented that. But it seems like they got all the guys who were going to come this year finally into the fold after the FedEx Cup was over. And now LIV has, 3-4 more events before the end of its season. So this is its time to shine. And I think if you are Norman and crew and some of the guys who committed for many years to this tour, that you had to feel pretty good about what you saw there in Boston, including the crowd reaction, which was definitely the best crowd, best atmosphere of the LIV events so far. What are your impressions now of where LIV is, and is it positioned to have a little surge here in the fall?
Hold on, I'm blind. They were wearing shorts. Hold on. Okay, we're good.
That was one of the best
No.
parts. Finally.
Yeah,
Long
big
socks are
Twitter
in, by
now.
the way, too.
Well, yes, just ask Lee Westwood, who also just missed a playoff.
Yes, yeah.
But mind you, I mean, I'm still confused a little bit. Okay, so they're in the team function. They've made it to the playoffs. It almost felt like since this was the first playoff, it almost felt like they're kind of making it up as they go along. Okay, we're just going to do what the PGA Tour does and play the same hole 8 damn times. Okay, let's see how that goes. That's essentially what they were willing to do. And when you have so many, in this case, at least you had 3 players, it makes it a little bit tougher. Maybe if it's 2 guys, okay, which guy flinches first? But when it seems like it's more than 2, maybe a better idea might be a little bit, especially for groups that are playing every single hole at different time at the same time throughout the tournament as well. I think Lahiri really was a good coup for them, especially I think perhaps it was a direct response to them knowing that Hideki Matsuyama was not making the jump over, and they figured that yes, Lahiri, not big name, has not won a major, but Lahiri's a guy that's grinded his time on the PGA Tour, has been in contention several times, has always been somebody that has been able to talk to the media after a round and has done a good job of doing so. A grinder in every sense, kind of a good profile guy, and like you said, really fits a good market and demographic where it will get some attention if he does well, which he fortunately was able to do this week. Dustin, it's good to see him get over the hump. He's been getting better time and time again as the competition is getting more and more rounded. Even the miss they had, which credit to Cameron Young for being very transparent with the process of LIV courting him. It almost felt like that high school dance where the guy was sitting at the bar and he was being courted, or he was being sitting at the area, and LIV reached out the hand and said, "Do you want this dance?" And I think when all was said and done, Cam decided, you know what? It's not a no, but I'm just going to sit this song out. And that's really what it seemed. It seemed like a no, but even I would consider it still a win for LIV because the door definitely was not slammed. He definitely didn't say, no, I refuse to go to LIV. I think he just was pleased with something we'll talk about in shot number 3, which was the tour's response to LIV among other outfits. But really, it was, I think it was a successful week. Joaquin Neiman, I think as much as everybody says Cam Smith, I don't get it. Neiman's the name that I think struck me the most just because he is that younger guy that has experienced success on the tour. But in the same sense, he's very good friends with Sergio Garcia, who's been recruiting a lot of his friends to come over and make the jump. And for Neiman, I think just the money and the guarantees and the liberties that come with that just spoke. At least for Cam Smith at least said, you know what, we're probably going to get at least one event in Australia. I'm going to get to see my family more. I don't just have to park it in Florida all the time. I can kind of travel and enjoy my time. Leishman, I'm sure, is the same way. Harold Varner III, you have to give him credit for just open and honest transparency from minute one, releasing his statement, admitting to feeling bad. But of course, he's really, really good friends with Bubba Watson on LIV. And of course, we've known from almost day one that Bubba was going to be one of the first guys. And Varner was one of the guys right behind him that was rumored. It was nice to see that. Cameron Tringali, it was good to see him make the jump. I think it makes sense. He's done everything on the PGA Tour, but of course get a win. But he's arguably been the most consistent player on tour over the years that hasn't gotten a win, and he's getting rewarded for it. And you know what? Good for him. Obviously, I don't think he departs the tour on bad terms, although I'm sure the tour would disagree because everybody jumps, but he did so in a classy way as Harold did, maybe a little bit lesser than Harold did, but in a similar vein, appreciative of everything. Literally thanked everybody from staffers and even media members, go figure. But regardless of that, it is good to see that at least LIV is trying to have good fields. I mean, heavens to Betsy, Henny Duplessis, who was one of the couple runners up in the first event that Charles Schwartzel won, didn't even make the field because he didn't have a good outing in the last event at Bedminster. So it is competitive getting in the field, and you notice that the field from top to bottom is a lot better all across the board, and the guys want to be there and they're playing, and they all want to beat the aces right now who have really dominated the team competition. So it has been more enjoyable to watch. I think David Faraday added a layer to it. Bubba Watson kind of having some fun as a captain commentator was interesting in spots. So they're definitely trying some new things. The fans that are there do seem to be enjoying the overall experience, although, of course, it's harder to tell when they're widespread and some groups get a lot more traction than the others, but that's kind of what you're dealing with on the PGA Tour side anyways to begin with, other than the destination holes on a golf course, which also it's good to see some of these courses. I'm sure there's the political aspect of it, but a lot of fans are getting the chance to see these courses for the first time. And who knows if they're going to be repeat courses over the years or if each place is going to get a chance to show their teeth. I know in the past we talked if Pittsburgh were to host a LIV, who would it be? And I said Fox Chapel, and then the USGA said not so fast. So I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. Obviously, Oakmont's not going to happen. So I don't think Pittsburgh is necessarily going to happen. And obviously, we've discussed Ohio. LPGA has a stop in Toledo, of course. There's notorious PGA Tour spot, of course, in Muirfield Village with the Memorial. Jack's not giving that up. If he gave it up, he would have done what Greg Norman did. And obviously, the Corn Ferry just re-upped and had everything with the Scarlet course at the Ohio State University. So there's definitely an opportunity at maybe one or two spots very close by. But I mean, heavens forbid, Inverness just hosted the Solheim Cup. So it's hard to gauge what exactly nearby, if anybody were to support LIV, and what the reaction would be. Obviously, Flight 93 was very, very close by to the Pittsburgh area, of course. So of course, there'd be some political demonstrations if anything were to be near in that area, of course. But beyond that, I mean, LIV is definitely on an uptick, and I obviously the PGA Tour is taking it a lot more seriously. Something hindsight 2020, we've said it a million times. They should have done on day one. But it's good to see that they at least have a response, and it'll be interesting to see if they ever join hands, as the one drunk fan that got hit by a Joaquin Neiman playoff shot tried to allude to. But outside of that, what was it? It was Jim, and he was 65 or whatever.
Yeah.
Poor on-course interviewer there could not get rid of that live shot quick enough. But, that's the joys of live television. I mean, you'd never see that on the PGA Tour. And of course, some people were shielding their eyes, but this is exactly what LIV wants. This is the kind of people they want to bring out there. They're there for a good time. They're closer to the player than they ever thought would imagine possible. And heck, they got on YouTube for it. So I'm sure that's going to be making the rounds. So all in all, I think this is a lot more successful of a week. I think this fits the outfit a lot better than any of the other stops in terms of what you want from an experience, what you saw on the course, and just everything in between. So all in all, it was probably their best showing, but obviously, I mean, there's still some things that need to be ironed out. I mean, anytime you have a new tour, there always is.
Now that you're talking about possible venues in the Western Pennsylvania area, I was thinking Laurel Highlands, which of course is very close to Shanksville and Flight 93, where that went down. But just some food for thought there. That course did host the Pennsylvania Classic a couple of times, one of which I went to right after 9/11. Come to think of it, it was the first tournament back after 9/11 for the PGA Tour. Must have been late September of that year, and they replaced the flags with American flags on all 18 of the greens. I'll never forget that. But also, I think I could easily see a place like Nemacolin Woodlands putting its hat in the ring. That's also a course that has hosted a PGA Tour event and did it for a few years, the 84 Lumber Classic. Joe Hardy and his family, they are always desirous of getting the brand in front of people's eyeballs. So I think that would be a potential fit, even though it's pretty far out of town near Uniontown, but still, that would be an option. All right, anyway, now about the implications where the two tours come together, as our friend on the fairway there was alluding to.
Wasn't the fairway, it was wide right.
I'm not sure that I'm rooting for a truce or anything, because that's been really interesting this year. I think men's golf in general has sucked up a lot of the attention that typically goes to some other sports because of the intrigue here, whether we're talking about the sports intrigue or the legal intrigue, which is right up there. I'm sure there are a lot of lawyers online who have been getting into many debates, or wannabe lawyers, in fact. But you have to admit, Zach, and one of the tropes that have been trotted out there, true or not, is that competition usually helps everybody, and it might even help the competitor who is supposedly getting passed by here in the PGA Tour, or at least the competitor that's being attacked, if you want to put it from the PGA Tour perspective, in that marketplace. by a so-called irrational actor with billions and billions of dollars to throw around. But the tour has announced changes. It's expanded the player impact program, the PIP. Regardless of what you think of that, that's more money given to higher profile players to try to keep them. Phil is not going to claim he won this time, I don't think. And there's also talk. This is what we were talking about 4 or 5 years ago in the world of golf, was finding a way to get the top players to play more events together so we could have just a higher profile. We could see these players getting together for more than just the majors and the Players Championship, perhaps, and maybe the Memorial. So we're looking at some elevated events. We're looking at basically a tour within a tour on the PGA Tour, and a lot of this triggered by players only meeting the week of the BMW, the second week of the playoffs, just this past month. Tiger Woods even made the flight up with Ricky Fowler notably in tow. And it wasn't some fire and brimstone thing. It was guys exchanging ideas and proposing them to Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan and his staff to see if they could get some traction there. Part of me really liked that, Zach, because it showed the players taking initiative. But part of me, if I were a player, would wonder, well, why wasn't the tour more, I guess, proactive from the leadership standpoint? The guys who aren't actually trying to earn a paycheck week in and week out and trying to keep their games together and compete. Why couldn't the guys in the boardroom think of something like this that would fly? So what's your take on the whole situation with the PGA Tour and whether it comes out of this a stronger product because of the LIV threat?
Well, let's first harken back to our 65-year-old friend that wants everything to be peace. Unfortunately, this is definitely not the Oslo Accord. He was not Bill Clinton, and we're not dealing with Arafat and Rabin over here. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but turn and face the strange. Changes. I mean, that's kind of what we're dealing with over here, and that was totally to get Matt Gajtka to pop. So you're welcome. But it's almost like
always worked for me.
Yeah, so it's almost like you have the pocket protector. Hey, look at all the extra money I found. This was convenient. I mean, between the tour's willingness to remove their nonprofit status to all of these heightened tournaments to the commitments of having to play these heightened tournaments, a lot of it does sound very familiar, doesn't it? Oh, wait, yeah, that's right. LIV did come up with this already. So there is definitely some dabbling, and a lot of these guys, most notably who have been the most vocal, have clearly been Phil Mickelson and Lee Westwood, that have said, oh, how convenient if it is it of the PGA Tour? I mean, Sergio Garcia, I'm sure, feels a little bit of validation too. Obviously, he left on some murky terms where he was upset with the rules official, where he notably got caught on the hot mic saying, I can't wait to bleeping leave the tour. So there was already some disappointment. Some people have been much more measured than others. I mean, Pat Perez has been a little bit more outspoken, but a little bit more diplomatic about it in some respects. But yeah, a lot of the LIV guys left, and this was why they left. And yeah, this is what they created. And it goes back to what we discussed all the way towards the beginning of the year. And we were mentioning about Phil Mickelson and the feeling of being the smartest guy in the room. And he sees the chessboard and he sees the checkers board simultaneously. And it sure seems like we're not talking about the Alan Shipnuck book anymore now, because it seems like everything Phil said has pretty much been just about spot on yet again. And here everybody was waiting to vilify Phil. And really, you're not necessarily hearing as many people vilifying Phil when the dude was right the whole time. Like, neither of us, I think, like to admit it, but Phil, once again, was right. He's doing so in a lot more measured of a way where he was smart. He played the long game and he let the dust settle, and the PGA Tour reacted exactly as he thought he was going to. Now, granted, he still will never get his PGA Tour membership, at least in the current disagreement. But yeah, a lot of this does seem very similar. The raising of the purses to everything. The payouts at the FedEx Cup were very similar to the payouts at LIV Tour events. Second place, there was a minor discrepancy of $1.5 million, but everything else pretty much paid out rather equally. So, I mean, but if you're Henrik Stenson, I'm sure you're thanking yourself for the $8 million that you got for the win versus, hey, I'm not even going to get even near a whiff of $8 million. I'm more likely to get $80,000 or $800,000 by getting into events and not even being able to make it through make a cut, which was consistently what his story was, just because the form wasn't up to par. But really, I mean, a lot of LIV has to be there feeling like this is exactly what they wanted. The PGA Tour didn't take us seriously. Now they are. And it's looking more and more likely that with how LIV has been presenting itself, that the TV deal is potentially more in the front seat of the car as opposed to the trunk. And they've done a lot of things professionally and personally where it looks like it's taken a lot seriously. And of course, there's going to still be the protesters. There always will, both journalistically and politically and personally. And a lot of those people aren't at the events. But I mean, this is what it is. The PGA Tour is trying to find ways to combat it, to keep their membership. And in a sense, it worked because they were able to keep Cameron Young. But for how long? I mean, a lot of this is exactly to Liv's point that the PGA Tour has lost interest in the everyman and the people that can't cut it, that can't consistently make it in the top even 20, 30 players. There's going to be punishments for that. It's going to be harder to maintain your card. And it's something else that we're going to discuss and shop for when we examine it in a different lens and look at it that way. But yeah, the PGA Tour is putting more emphasis on cards, and obviously LIV has these shorter fields. They're not going to be able to get everybody in, but there might be more of a willingness of those fringe guys to get in. Who knows? Maybe we might even see our good buddy, and we're not talking about Kevin Na, or our other really, really good buddy, Grayson Murray. He might be a guy that could go in there, and we could see the dreaded Na and Grayson Murray tee time. But all jokes aside, I mean, it could happen. A guy like him hasn't found the success in the tour. The current format that the tour has doesn't seem to award a player like him that's trying to grind and just trying to get in the green. Maybe LIV calls for a player like that. Maybe not exactly Grayson Murray, but a player of similar ilk that's been able to make it in weekends, make it on the first page of leaderboards, and has just not been able to find success at a level that he would like to. And maybe it's time to have that change and figure it out. So it's really interesting now, more so. And of course, we're going to have the lawsuits coming. We're still waiting for it from the official World Golf Ranking, though it seems like by not saying anything, they're saying everything we need to hear right now, because it doesn't look promising for LIV in that regard. But even guys that are trying to play the majors, obviously Cam Smith is secure for several years, and I don't think they're going to be able to change that, because look, when he was a member, he won. But it's going to be a lot more murky for a lot of other guys, like we've said in the past. So it'll be interesting to see what the response is, but it seems at least now that both sides have laid their cards out on the table, and now we're just going to let the chips fall where they may.
Both sides are looking for star power, and well, at the same time, LIV is looking for legitimacy too. So I could see at some point there being a desire to pick up some of the PGA Tour also rans. Well, they've already had a few of them, guys like Hudson Swafford or Cameron Tringale, who have not made a breakthrough on the PGA Tour. Well, now there's a chance on LIV Tour to make a name for themselves, even though I guess discerning golf fans would say, well, they already had their chance on what was the best tour in the world and what still might be the best tour in the world, and they couldn't get it done. So there is that debate about what's better for either league. Is it better to have a deep bench, so to speak, like the PGA Tour undoubtedly does right now, or is it better to have some guys at the top that can really move the needle? And clearly you'd rather have both, but where your priorities lie is the question for those who are either building a league like LIV is, or trying to maintain a league and maintain your supremacy like the PGA Tour is. Now, it does tie into our final question here on the fourth and final shot on the par four. As Zach was saying, the Korn Ferry Tour is making some changes, and there's going to be some more promotion from the Korn Ferry Tour. Basically, Zach, more promotion, more relegation for those of you, the footy fans out there who are watching. If you're in America, you may want promotion and relegation in American soccer. If you're a fan of the sport abroad, then you're already used to it. But certainly, I think we can agree golf could use some more stakes. Some more stakes at the top of the field are always there because you're trying to win, but stakes at the bottom of the field too. And we're not just talking about cuts. We're talking about getting bumped down to a lower level. So we're seeing these elevated events. If you want to make it in there, you got to just play better. To quote the old pirate Tony Sanchez, I know you might remember him. He was always on that. Don't like it.
Let it go. Let it go.
Well, that was part of it too, but don't like it, play better was something he always said to the media as well. And that can apply for players on the tour who want to get to these top echelon events or just want to stay on tour. But Zach, about the Korn Ferry Tour, I think it's becoming more of a public spectacle. We saw the Korn Ferry Tour finals this past weekend on Golf Channel. I think more golf fans in general are paying attention to the so-called up-and-coming stars. Now, some of these players will wash out. We'll never hear from them again. But some, like a Cam Young of a couple of years ago, will be contending in majors in the very near future. Will Zalatoris, who was a Korn Ferry member when he was making a run at the Masters last season. So it can happen, and it does happen. And I'm cognizant of that. So how important do you think it is to have a more robust promotion system for the Korn Ferry Tour? Because that's what PGA Tour officials and fans say is one of the main arguing points for the PGA Tour, is that you have just a greater pool of talent trying to be funneled in, as opposed to LIV, which is a strictly an invitational thing, but they're going to add their own type of a promotion relegation system in coming years, as it turns out, trying to get those world ranking points and trying to just be more legitimate in the eyes of the golf world. So your thoughts on what the tour is trying to do here with its minor league, if you will?
I think they're trying to turn the Korn Ferry into the Wild Wild West, and
Hmm.
it could go one of two ways. Honestly, I think a lot of the fans that were going to these Korn Ferry Tour final events did so because you had some of those guys from the PGA Tour that were coming over, a Bill Haas, a Jason Duffner, David Lingmerth, who just won the Korn Ferry event at the Ohio State University the previous week, and that's not going to happen anymore. It's so a lot of if there's urgency for those guys to keep their card, but those might be guys that you might see over at LIV that are more likely. Jason Duffner infamously winning a PGA Tour championship, among others. He could be a guy that maybe now they go after, and he's got a personality that is still very affable to a lot of fans that they're very much into. Of course, Duffner was very much a thing for almost an entire season.
Yeah.
So that itself is reason. And, he's not going to get that opportunity. I mean, he has that past major champion, so he can get into select PGA Tour events through that way. But is that what he wants to do, or does he want to try to get a guarantee and see what happens that way? So it's really, really interesting in that respect. But it's good for these young guys where the PGA Tour is clearly trying to give these young guys an opportunity and doing so decisively, where the purses are more, where they're listening to the comments that guys like our buddy Grayson Murray did make, where guys are struggling to break even. And this is an opportunity to have much more of a steady income and a steady pace of living, which is very important. And it shows that they are listening to that. But they are modeling the tour finals now after the FedEx Cup almost, where you're having 4 events now, which was how the FedEx Cup used to be. And they're cutting after every single event. So there are implications for guys who don't make it. And if there's a guy that doesn't make it beyond that top 30, is that something where LIV tries to come in and swoop the extras if there's somebody that's a big name worth mentioning? Probably not. So this is an opportunity for them to protect their investment and grow these young guys and make it almost a second chance you, in a sense, where if you don't get it done the first year, well, this is your opportunity to get it the second year. And you already know what the purses are going to be. You already know how to budget and make a steady living. Now it's on you to figure it out. For the guys that are 126 to 150, you're on the short end of the stick. You're not going to be able to qualify and re-get your card that way. So now it comes to a question. You're kind of an afterthought. You're kind of stuck on that invisible third tour, so to speak. So now push comes to shove. Is it going to be where you can maybe get into LIV? Is it where you're in purgatory? It's hard. That part's fleshed out, but it makes it more competitive too, especially for those journeymen that are trying to either A, hang on, or B, hang on, like the guys that are in their early to mid 40s and trying to keep a tour card, or at least keep some relevancy of play and reps until the Champions Tour comes along. So it's really interesting what they've done with it, and it's something that shouldn't be ignored. It should be watched, and it's good to see that more eyes are watching it, because a lot of these youth, like you've seen, are going to be the future. I mean, Scottie Scheffler came through the Korn Ferry Tour. Justin Thomas came through the Korn Ferry Tour. So many of these big names that are succeeding came through there, and a lot of people didn't get a chance to watch them until they were at your favorite course, or until you saw them on CBS, NBC, ESPN, BBC, whatever outfit you decide to watch your golf in. So it is interesting. I think they're trying to make it where there's more eyes on them, and hopefully Golf Channel and the TV rights packages can help in making that happen. If I'm the PGA Tour, I put a full court press out there on that. But really, it's interesting all the way around, and it's nice to see that the Korn Ferry Tour was not ignored, because it is important for these guys to feel wanted and desired. Because if it leaves the bad taste in the mouth, of course you're going to see guys that are more collegiate guys who the Korn Ferry Tour is chasing, and all of a sudden they're going to jump to LIV because the opportunity's right there. I mean, we saw with Puig, we saw, of course, with James Piot, Puig, of course, was, I think, out recently, but Piot was close to dead last in the field last week, but he had that guarantee. So obviously he's made the decision. I don't think he could come back to the Corn Ferry Tour at this point in time, but it's at a point where guys like him will have a legitimate decision to make, because at least there's now an opportunity to find a way to fit, plug and play. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out, but at least the Corn Ferry is a lot more of a viable option, specifically for younger players.
And it's good for fans to be able to follow players and feel like they actually have a chance to rise quickly. It was so strange that a guy like Zalatoris still didn't even have his official PGA Tour membership until this year, and he kept showing up in majors. And well, same deal for Scheffler. It took him a while to break through, but he was right there. And it would be enjoyable to watch college players or even players straight out of high school to be able to see them climb the ladder a little more quickly. And just adding some volatility, I think, is good for fans and ultimately good for the competition, which is what the PGA Tour claims it wants. So it put its money where its mouth is in this case. And well, now we can, of course, as fans, look forward, if you want to say that, to a more fractured men's professional golf scene. But at the end of the day, I think we're going to see both leagues catering more to the fan because of this competition. So I do feel like we can take some solace in that. And as members of the golf media too, Zach, we can take solace in the fact that the headlines just seem to keep on coming. So that part of it is fun as well. We have not had any shortage of topics on the par four ever since the calendar turned over to 2022. I know that much. And it's funny, we started the year talking about Cam Smith winning in historic fashion in Hawaii. And here we are coming in second on LIV. At that time, I know I was doubting that LIV was going to happen. And by February, I was even more so in that camp. But things can change, especially when you have billions of dollars, I suppose. So here we are. And golf will never be the same. We know that much after this year, huh?
That's for darn sure. That's for darn sure. I just got to get out and play more. That hasn't happened in quite some time.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that will stay the same is amateur golfers like us will always be lamenting that we aren't able to get out and play more, at least until we're retired one day. All right, Zach, thank you so much. Thank you all for watching throughout the year. We're going to continue to have par fours, even though it is the off season. But many of you know, fall is a great time to play golf. Fall is a great time to watch golf. The President's Cup is coming up with diminished fields, especially on the international side. But hey, I'm sure we'll discuss that in our next episode, and we'll see how the LIV events continue to progress on, if they grow, if they change their tone in terms of presentation as they get closer to the end of the season. And then we're building up for that final at Doral, which we haven't seen major competition on in quite some time. It used to be on the PGA Tour, and then it was dropped off the schedule. Now we'll see golf back in the Miami area, and that'll be the conclusion of LIV in a couple of months. So all that to look forward to, and look forward to talking to you about on Pittsburgh Golf Now. Make sure to visit our website, pittsburghgolfnow.com. Thanks, and talk to you soon.